the opportunities are huge. This is where the global economy has been driven, and so yeah, from my story, technology is absolutely core to everything that I've done in my career, and without it, I don't know what I've been doing.
Hello, my name is Pritesh Chauhan, and early this year I turned 40 and I wanted to do something meaningful alongside all of the celebrating. I decided to ask my community to support me in helping an underprivileged community and give them a small yet transformative boost. This is how the Rainbow Boosters project was born. In sharing the idea with people, I realised that we all know of a teacher, a family member, a friend, an author, a singer that has made a profound impact on our life. I wanted to create a space where we can share those stories. So welcome to the Rays of Sunshine series. In this episode, I've invited a former colleague, Jim Small, who is a ball of positive energy, a great role model as a father to his two boys, and an all-round fun guy. Jim is an experienced and commercially driven mobile telecom senior product owner with a significant track record innovating and delivering multiple world-first digital products using emerging mobile technology. He's worked with startups and large corporates around the world and is really driving change and revolutionising the digital mobile world. What I love about Jim is his positive can-do attitude. And I have many fond memories of partying with Jim in Barcelona after we delivered days of full-on events at Mobile World Congress. I'm really happy he agreed to come and speak to me on this series, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi, Jim. How are you?
Hey, Pritesh. Yeah, very well, thank you, mate. Good to see you as always.
Yeah, likewise. I just really wanted to get you on for lots of different reasons. As I said in my intro, I just love spending time with you and think you have lots to offer as well because your approach and your attitude is really inspiring. So thanks for taking the time. I want to get to where we start in all of these conversations
Go
is
for it.
who is your ray of sunshine? Who is the person or the teacher that's had the biggest impact on your life and how have they shaped your future?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I mean, and before I start, look, it's always a pleasure, and I'm very, very keen, very, very happy to be involved in this, and really, really, really support the work that you're doing with Rainbow Boosters. It's awesome. I had a little bit of a think about this one, and it's a tricky one because there are a few people, but the person I'd like to talk to you about is my grandfather. My granddad is my mum's dad,
Yeah.
born in Manchester in the UK in 1907. And he had so many things thrown at him in terms of barriers to getting on in life, and just one by one overcame all of them. So he was born in 1907, and he was born with a dislocated hip, meaning that as a child he couldn't walk properly. In fact, he couldn't walk at all. And this is before the days where you could reset a hip and you would just you'd live a normal life. So he lived his entire life, and he lived to 96.
Wow.
With this dislocated hip, and he wasn't able. He never broke into a jog in his life. He was practically disabled.
Yeah.
Um, and to add insult to injury, his father, when he was probably two, was taken into a mental institute. They used to call it an asylum back in the day, and he had some serious mental issues. And when my grandfather was 11, his dad died. He was born in 1907, so 11 was 1918. So he was suffering from the First World War at the same time. And his dad died, and at the age of 12, basically became the man of the house. He had two little sisters.
Wow.
He had to then leave school. He was pulled out of school, and he was told he had to go and get a job, age 12, 13. And he had to fend for the family. Then two world wars. The economic times were terrible. Um, but he kind of drove himself forward, and he educated himself. He managed to get a scholarship into what was called Martin's Bank, which later became Barclays Bank. He joined as a kind of admin kid at age sort of 16 in Barclays Bank. And then by the time he retired, he was managing four branches of Barclays Bank in Manchester, and he had 200 people working for him, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's a fairly humble story. He didn't take over the world, but he had just about every problem you could think of thrown at him.
Yeah.
And he came through. And by the time I knew him, he was in his 60s by the time I knew him when I was born. And he was just this lovely, kind, gentle guy who you wouldn't have believed had a problem in the world. He had a great family around him, and he succeeded in life. And my story has been very, very happy and easy in comparison. So I always use him as being a bit of a torch to say, look, if my grandfather could get through all of the stuff that was thrown at him as a kid and as a young man, then I've got no excuse. And I tell my kids that story. We're all very lucky,
Yeah.
and I've always used him as a motivation just because of the hardship that he overcame.
Yeah, that's incredible. And um, the thing I just think about automatically is you were referring to the time element of when, when he was born, what he went through. And
Mm.
if you reframe that into just the socioeconomic setup that some people have, that they find themselves amongst so many barriers, and it's the ones that just fight for themselves to get out that seem to have these most inspiring stories as well. Like, yes, there
No, you're
was,
dead right.
it might have been 1907, but even in like 2023, there's so many people that have got so many things stacked against them, and it takes that willpower, which I find so like amazing to see. Because you're right, you and me, regardless of what others have done for us, have it pretty easy, right? We have it
Really,
really well.
incredibly easy,
The
incredibly
the
easy.
challenges that we find are self-inflicted, most of the things, the lifestyle
Mm.
that we want, or the things that we want to do, or the scenario we find ourselves. So I
Mm.
just find those stories so amazing to hear, because you just think, where did they find that willpower to get out? Because he could have just succumbed to, I've got a disability, or I've got all these challenges, and life's really tough and just throws me really awful curveballs, so I'm just
Mm.
gonna not bother. But there's something deep rooted that I,
Yeah.
that drive to get out of that situation,
No,
and
there
then it
is.
has an impact on everyone else around them that they don't even realize.
Yeah, because in the end, my mother, his daughter grew up living in a very comfortable, detached house on a park in Manchester. And, he'd built a life for
Yeah,
his four kids where even they were comfortable, but he'd made that all for himself. And
yeah,
he'd driven himself from and you're right, he could have gone the other way and said, oh, it's too difficult. I've had to, it's not fair. But that's the last thing he was doing. I think actually it's kind of, some of the other themes around what you're doing with Rainbow Boosters is I think a lot of what you just said around the need for people to be determined and fight through what they've got. I think that's a theme that I want to come back to in this conversation, because I think that's a big part of what we should all take from my granddad's story and 1,000 other stories like
yeah.
it.
Yeah, what I love is the ripple effect that, we talk about Rays of Sunshine here, and that's a perfect example. Less obvious probably, where, he hasn't directly impacted your life by giving you a route out, or, giving you a book that influenced you or something like that. It was very much by example, which is, the
Mm,
optimal way to change someone's life, is by leading by example.
yeah.
And but what's happened is you tell that story to your kids as
Mm,
a real good example of how lucky they have it, or at least what drive can do, and why it's important to have that. So it's a real
100%.
good example of a ray of sunshine. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's great to hear, and it gives me a bit more insight into you as well, which I love.
Yeah, good stuff.
Talking about other influences and other aspects, when I set this series up, when I started to talk to people, it was coming from different places. People tell me
Mm,
about books or films, so
mm.
music and that kind of thing, which I know is quite influential in your life. So is there are there books or films that have had that sort of impact on you, that then you've gone, oh, actually, that's helping me drive towards my goals?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of stories, and in music as well. There's tons. I could probably talk to you for 2 hours just about the inspirational books and movies and bands and things like that. But the one that I picked out, on the surface, it's going to sound a bit cheesy, and it's going to sound a bit, oh really? But what I've gone for, that I just want to talk about a little bit, is the film Rocky,
Yeah,
from Sylvester Stallone, and not for the reason that you probably think. So the film is about a kid in the wrong end of Philadelphia who is, I think he's a debt collector's kid who just goes in, and he's on the rough end of life, and he becomes he becomes a world champion boxer. Great. That's a good story. And maybe that inspires a few people, but that's not the bit that inspires me. The bit that inspires me is Sylvester Stallone himself, as a struggling actor, as a young man in the late 1960s, I think, was struggling to get out of, he's struggling to achieve his vision, which was to become a big actor. And he got taken, or he went to see Muhammad Ali fight in, I think, in New York. And the guy that Muhammad Ali fought was this young kid who no one gave a chance to, and he ended up knocking Muhammad Ali onto the floor. And I don't think he won, but he put up a good old fight. And Sylvester Stallone, off the back of that, wrote the script himself for
wow.
Rocky. And and then we all know what Rocky became. Even that isn't the story. The story is that Sylvester Stallone then took the script for Rocky to various film companies and said, "Hey, look, I'd like to make this film." And one film company offered $300,000, which in the '70s was a lot of money, and Stallone had nothing to his name at the time, and said, "We'll buy it and we'll make it, but on the condition that you're not in it. We don't want you to be in the film." And he said, and so Sylvester Stallone, penniless. I think the story is that the week or two before that, he'd offered somebody his dog to sell his dog. He needed the money that much, and he turned down $300,000 and said, "No, I'm going to believe in myself,
Yeah.
and maybe this will all come crashing down. Maybe this is going to be a mistake, but I am going to back myself, and I am going to have the confidence." So he said, "No, thanks. I don't want you $300,000." And the rest's history. Someone offered him $1 million to make the film with him in it. He made it, and we all know where that led him. And Rocky's now grossed billions or at the box office. So that story in itself
Yeah.
of the fact that there's this kid who wants to be a movie star, and he believes in himself so much that he's willing to turn down a third of $1 million to realize his vision, and did it.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that story back when Rocky came out and just thinking, wow,
Yeah.
that's pardon my French. I hope I'm allowed to say this on your blog, but that's balls. That's good.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that at all. So thank you for sharing that. It's incredible, isn't it? The self-belief that he had at rock bottom, to then deliver something like that is amazing. Actually, it leads on to where I wanted to go a little bit. So we've talked a little bit about self-belief, right? This inner fight and drive. And from the little interactions I've had with the kids at the school that we're helping, but also all the work that I've done previously around documenting children and their educational transformation, there are kids that have this drive and self-drive to learn and succeed, but they don't necessarily have the resources, right? Or they're not given the space to do that. What do we say to those kids to say, who've got this belief but don't really know a route out? What do you say to them to then give them this ability to continue to use that drive? What would you say to them?
I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? If you're a kid in that environment and you think you can do something, but you don't know how to get out, you don't know how to channel that. There's a lot you can say to them, but a lot of it sounds a little bit empty. But I think what I'd be saying to those kids, and what if I was in that position, I'd like to be said to me is you can do it. Try, keep trying, persevere. Don't be afraid to ask. Be a little bit cheeky. Be the kid that is the one that asks the cheeky question or suggests the crazy thing that is probably impossible, because maybe it isn't impossible. Be positive. Smile. We know how far being. You smile at someone, you get a smile back. You go to someone and say, "Look, I want to do this thing." You're going to find the chances are you'll find somebody out there who will reflect that positivity back at you and give you an opportunity. Or at least if you don't do that, you're not going to. So, and also the other thing I was thinking was, find a mentor, and find somebody, and it doesn't have to be a mentor in the kind of traditional sense of a serious relationship about developing yourself, but find somebody who can help you. Find somebody who maybe's done it before, or maybe has done something similar, or you feel might have a different perspective on it, or something like that, where you can say, "Look, how would you do it? How could you help me? In my position, what would you do?" Sometimes the wood for the trees is a bit of a barrier,
Yeah.
and I think I'd be doing that, and I'd also be saying to them, absorb information, read, and I know that's not quite as simple as it might be for some people who don't have access to resources, but where you can absorb, find experiences from other people, read stuff, build your own capabilities just by having your own knowledge and your own information base of how to do this stuff. Give yourself every chance. I mean, these things are easy to say and probably not quite as easy to do, but giving the kids the positivity to think they can do it, really.
Is one of the things that I think you and I have connected on a lot over the years is this power of positive encouragement. And I know
Big time.
I know that that's such a big piece of the puzzle for you with your kids as well. And
Yeah.
there is so much power in it. The ability, how you feel when someone just puts their arm around you and goes, "You can do it."
Yeah.
There's so many examples of that, and then asking the questions, being curious, I think is definitely a big piece of it. If you don't tell someone what you're thinking or what your dreams are, then they can't necessarily help you, and that could be in any shape and form. I was
Mm.
watching something recently around comedians in Chicago, and a lot of their stories were my uncle or my friend took me to a comedy store when I was 12 because they knew that I had an interest in it. And that's when I saw that there's people like me doing those things. And
Mm.
then I just started to go on a Saturday and now look at me. It's just
Yeah.
you don't
No,
know what it
totally.
is from football to reading to music or education and chess
Oh,
or whatever it is,
100%.
right?
One
You know,
hundred percent. There's a series that I'm sure you'll know well. I'm not sure that everybody does, but in the UK on the radio there's a series that's been going for years called Desert Island Discs,
yeah,
and and the principle for anybody who hasn't heard it is that somebody famous or somebody who's achieved, somebody who's done something in life is asked to choose 8 pieces of music that they might want to take to a fictional desert island where they ever put on it, and it's a kind of framework for getting them to talk about their story.
yeah,
And it's a biographical thing. They're going to go through and and pretty much everyone I've ever listened to, and I've listened to a few, has that theme that you just mentioned. I saw somebody doing something and realized, wow, they look like me. I can do that too. Or they saw somebody doing something and thought, that's the thing. That's what I want in life. And it's a repeating thing. And if you can get kids to find that, I think, or you can get kids to have that little light bulb moment where they think, oh, yeah, that's what I want, or yeah, I think I can do it. Massive,
yeah.
huge.
Your own personal experience with education and technology. So, I know you're a tech geek at the highest degree and been very successful in your career with that. How has, education or technology really helped you overcome challenges or obstacles in your like personal life or even your
Mm.
work life?
I think my story with technology is an interesting one. I think just because um, uh, I wasn't always going down the technology route, and I think education and technology were the kind of key that unlocked everything that I've done in my career, almost by accident. And when I say by accident, I was a kind of a humanities, media, arts kind of guy at university. I did a media and communication degree, which was all about filmmaking, and it was all about sociology and literature and linguistics and psychology and this kind of thing. And then when I graduated, I'm not going to give away my age, but when I graduated, it was bang in the middle of a massive recession, and nobody wanted somebody who had a degree in media and linguistics. It just was completely unsellable. So I went off and did an MSc in information technology, which was a 1 year conversion course for non tech undergraduates in IT. So in 1 year, I learned how to code and I learned how to normalize a database and goodness knows what. And then from that, I took that into the real world, and I managed to get myself a job as a developer in a printer typesetter company, who were starting to start. And I know this is something close to you and your family too, Pritesh, but starting to take traditional printed material and put it online.
Yeah.
This is actually before the internet, and I am giving away my age, but we were coding printed material for academic books and things like that to put on CD, so that some of these documents were on CD, and then that became the internet. Let's start putting these things on the internet, and then I got a job in a web agency, and I started doing account management for FMCG brands in a web agency, and then I got into mobile tech. And if I hadn't done that MSc in IT, I would never have taken the technology route. So I think technology, having having an awareness of and some skills in technologies opened up all these opportunities for me that would never have existed. And I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't done that IT degree. But I think that it's almost ancient history now what I did, but it's still the same. If a kid today can code or understands how PCs work, understands how the internet works, and gets their head around some of the technologies that we're looking at in IT today, AI and beyond, the opportunities are huge. This is where the global economy has been driven. And so, yeah, from my story, technology is absolutely core to everything I've done in my career, and without it, I don't know what I've been doing.
In a world where technology and digital literacy are becoming ever more important. It's such a small period of time in the grand scheme of things where we've gone from no internet, for example, to
Incredible.
now, and the stuff I'm seeing around AI and all of the bits that are going on, the speed at
Mm,
which that's happening is phenomenal.
it is.
How do we ensure that, we're talking about inclusion, right? Essentially,
Mm,
how do we ensure that together, regardless of backgrounds and circumstances, everyone has the opportunity to an equal quality education and technology? Because you have a government play and then you have the private sector, but essentially the divide just seems to be getting bigger actually than getting smaller, even though we have all of these technologies around. So what are your views
mm.
on that kind of digital divide inclusion piece?
I just think it's I think there's a huge opportunity right now to try and close that gap, just because it's becoming cheaper and it's becoming easier to provide access to technology to every person on the planet. We know that in mobile first economies, access to the internet is something that is becoming increasingly possible through low cost devices, et cetera, et cetera. The recycling of laptops, of tablets, all that kind of thing. There's no reason why we can't get IT capability into the hands of everybody.
Yeah,
And I think because the internet is basically, it really democratizes a whole bunch of things in the world. If I've got access to the internet, I've got access to all of the knowledge on the planet, all the people on the planet, all of the resources. There's no reason why, if I'm a kid in a village in a developing country, or somebody in a high-end school in the UK, I've got access to the same things.
yeah,
And so I think it's just about ensuring that we can make sure, and very much in the way that you and your initiative are already starting to create a place where people can access these tools, to create so they can have the opportunity via the connected world that we live in, but also the understanding and the guidance and the mentoring and the leadership to actually know what to do with it. So I think I don't see any reason why we can't. But I do think there is a divide between what we should do and what is possible. And I think governments are very there's a lot to do in the world, isn't there? There's a lot of problems in the world, and organisations like yours, I think, are really necessary to help get those kids and that technology and those opportunities together. Because
yeah.
probably the governments aren't focused on that because they've got other things to do. But yeah, yeah, I'm sure you'll tell me it's not quite as simple as it should be, but it feels to me like there's a huge opportunity to bring these two things together.
Yeah, you've seen it more from a different, almost a enterprise level with the work that you've done in India with some of those big, even not even just
Mm,
India, like globally with
mm,
operators and stuff, just the hurdles and the priorities and the focuses that they have.
that's
Um,
right.
I spoke to our really good friend Gautam on this series a few series back, and
Great.
his optimism is actually around, even in those scenarios now, everyone's base level bridge is a device, a mobile device.
Mm,
So how are we leveraging the basic thing that they have access to? That's their portal to the world. So they have it.
exactly.
It's
Mm,
just how, to your point, how do they get the digital skills and literacy that they need? How are they getting the content that they need? So encouragingly, it's there is more out there, and also what I'm seeing a lot of, which is giving me a lot of hope, is a lot of e-waste, uh, digital e-waste recycling, and how massive
mm,
organizations are going, okay, after 3 years, if we're replacing all our laptops or desktops, let's give them somewhere, let's repurpose them and
yeah.
leverage them. So that's giving me a bit more encouragement around the tech space as well. As you say, there's a lot going on in the world, but
Yeah, there is, but I think there's a lot going on in the world, so perhaps governments aren't focusing on this quite as much as they should. The big corporations, if they've got those recycle policies and that e-waste is there, and that's great, but those organisations, it's not something that many of them are doing to actually then put the infrastructure in place to get them in front of the right people and to train. So organisations like yours, and many others like it, I think are absolutely critical in this chain, because the bit of glue that you're adding is getting the right equipment in front of the right people and explaining to them what to do with it and how they can access all of the global resources they can access through those portals, without which, there's just a bit of kit. So I think, it's fantastic stuff, and and massive success to you, and I hope to be a part of it.
Thank you. I want to take this opportunity, Jim, to be a little bit selfish and ask you to articulate why you think it's so important for people to support initiatives like Rainbow Boosters, not specifically Rainbow Boosters, but stuff like this. Why do we need to go beyond ourselves to help others? I just know that you care about this so much, and you've been such a supporter of what we're doing at Rainbow Boosters, and just me personally, that I was just being
Absolutely.
selfish because I want to hear another pep talk from Jim Small, because that'll get me through the week for sure.
First of all, the pep talk piece is, there are very few people out there that you meet who have kind of the motivation, the drive, the personality, and the all round good guyness of yourself, to really take people along with you. And I think it's been an absolute pleasure working with you over the years, and long may that continue. I think that it takes kind of inspirational people, and it takes energy and motivation to actually go out and make a difference. And I think too many people don't, and too many people just get on with their day job, and they get on with what they do all day, and they take their salary and they go home and they do whatever they do. And I think that's not quite good enough, because, as we know, there's a lot of problems in the world. There's a lot of things that governments are doing. There's a lot of things that enterprises are doing. But organizations like Rainbow Boosters and people like yourself, I think, are absolutely necessary, because otherwise that glue in between problem and the solution isn't going to be there. It's unfortunately not going to be a case where the world fixes itself. It's not going to be a case where the governments of the countries where this is needed, and even in the UK, and in some of the countries where it's probably less of a problem, there are still things that the governments are working on that mean that they're not going to be focused on some of these issues. I think in order for future generations to improve the planet that we live on, the more educated and the more enabled that the next generation are, the better, the more informed. Ignorance leads to the perpetuation of these problems. If we can get the next generation to be accessing all of the things that we've had the privilege of accessing, if we can get people in the places that you're helping them to step up, step out, and actually do and realize the potential that they've got, I think the world's got a chance of being, a super positive, happy, environmentally balanced, peaceful place. If not, then all the problems of the world are going to be perpetuated. Now, I'm not suggesting Rainbow Boosters is going to fix every problem on the planet, but it's people like and it's people like this initiative stepping in and saying, no, look, I want to make a difference, that cumulatively I think is going to be something that is really critical moving forward. And that's why I'm talking to you. That's why I really want to get involved and be involved and stay involved. And and kind of the vision that you have for it and the energy that you have for it, I think is critical. Otherwise, the thing's going to fail. So all power to you. I hope that pep talk will last you an hour or two. But genuinely, I think it's critical stuff, and I'm super impressed, and I'm very happy to be here talking to you about it.
If you're listening to this, then you can't see that I'm currently smiling ear to ear for so many reasons. Because if you're watching this, you'll see that the sun's just literally come out where Jim is, and it's glowing on his head, and where I'm at as well. Where it was cloudy when we started this conversation, the sun's just decided to beam. So look at the power you've got, Jim, in making the sun come out.
Wow!
Just
I didn't
thank
know I
you
had
so
such
much.
control. No worries.
Lovely sentiments, and
no problem,
yeah,
sir. All men.
No, I definitely know that, and a lot of that is in you as well. So I think that's why we get on so well, and look forward to having you support and help us drive this thing forward. To wrap this up, we always ask for one positive message or a quote that's inspired you throughout your life and that continues to motivate you. I have a feeling you have a few. So what's the one that you're going to share with us today?
I do have a few, but some of them were quite cheesy. Some of them were quite obvious. But the one I wanted to go for, I think the theme we've talked about is that there's so many people out there who need an opportunity, who have the capability to take advantage of that opportunity, who can who deserve the opportunity. But one of the things that I feel is that the individual is quite key in that as well. So the Rainbow Boosters and yourself and all of the parties who are out there doing these kind of things can provide all the tools, and you can provide the computer lab and the skills and so on. But in the end, what we're all relying on is that once that infrastructure is there, it actually unlocks the potential that's inside the actual people themselves. So the quote I'm going for is from a guy called Jesse Owens, who was a sprinter in the 1930s, famous for his winning of 4 gold medals in front of Adolf Hitler in Berlin. And we all know that the amazing symbolism of that. But the quote that I wanted to that a quote of his that kind of resonates with me is that the only victory that counts is the one over yourself. I.e., if he hadn't had the inner belief to do that, he would never have done it. If you didn't have the inner belief to do the rainbow boosters, it wouldn't happen. If the kid you're trying to help doesn't have the inner belief that they can do it, it's not going to happen. So I think if you don't have belief in yourself, if we don't all really think we can do it, then we're not going to do it. So that quote I think is important, just because it's a two-way thing, isn't it? You can go and help the individuals, in the communities that you're helping, but we need to also harness the people in those communities who believe they can do it. And those two things put together will hopefully, achieve big things. So that's the quote I went for. As you say, could have given you 10 others.
We'll do another series on that. No, I think so important, so important. We are heavily relying that we create sparks in some of these children. And the reality is, having seen them, they're so driven and they're so smart in different ways that we believe that it will work. But you're right, it takes two to make these things happen, and you've got to step through those doors and that get put in place for you. So really, really interesting and powerful quote. Thank you, Jim. I just want to say thanks. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. I can't wait to catch up with you soon. Your stories, your experience, your guidance, and essentially your positive light is just so special, and I'm glad we captured it and could share it. The Raise the Sunshine series is linked to the Rainbow Boosters project, where we're supporting underprivileged children by connecting them to the internet and a community to ensure that they don't get left behind in a digital world. You can find out more at rainbowboosters.com, and all the links are in the comments below, and the next episode will be with you in a few days. So with that, I just want to say thanks, Jim, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Pritesh, it's been an absolute honour. Thank you very much for letting me get involved, and speak soon.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Cheers.